Alright, what's going on YouTube? It's DEFCON TCG, and I'm here today because I played Rockets to Locals this week, and I had a ton of fun. I think this deck is really cool, and you just have a lot of options that other decks do not have in the current format. This is the list that I was rocking with. There is a small oversight in this list because I got to Locals a little bit later than I expected, and I didn't put any Pokepads in my deck, so I think what I ended up doing is putting a third copy of Proton, and then I put the Watchtower. I think this card's really buns, but you kind of need it in certain matchups. And then, I don't know, most of the time I just wish it was a factory. A lot of the times it's just like a stadium bump. I definitely would take this card out of my deck. But yeah, I think going forward, I'd probably just cut like a Proton and a Watchtower for 2 copies of Pokepad. And then that's probably the best way to play this deck. I think this deck's really good. Just being able to have 2 beefy psychic Pokemon in your deck to be able to KO stuff like Mega Lucario, to KO stuff like Dragapult, obviously, with the Clefairy, and then being able to copy it with Mimikyu to be able to spread damage to your opponent's bench. And then it could even create cool game states where if you use the Mimikyu to put 6 damage counters on like your opponent's Meowth, there is a potential later in the game if you are able to like copy another Phantom Dive to be able to KO that Sneasel, KO with Sneasel on the bench, which is pretty funny. So yeah, we're just going to get into it with some of the games. Alright, we're going to get into game 1 here, and I am playing the Rockets deck against my buddy Felipe, and he is playing Dragapult. And I've been going second with this Rockets deck. I'm not really sure if it's correct, but to go blind, because obviously you have something like Proton where you're allowed to play a supporter on the first turn of the game. The problem is that you really don't want to get Badooed, and it does give your opponent like that extra turn to set up, where you can potentially threaten a spider attack turn 2. But my buddy over here only plays Dragapult, so I knew he was playing Dragapult. And generally against those Dragapult decks, you want to go second, just be able to guarantee that supporter and item turn, because more than likely they're just going to go for that Badoo into the start of the game. They're going to try to Badoo you immediately. But I got really lucky here, as Felipe tells me, he's like, I prized both of my Badoos, which is pretty crazy. So I'm free from the item lock this game, and I was really hoping he wasn't going to attach energy to the active, so then he could go for the Jet Headbutt, whatever the little one is on the Dracloak. I forgot what that attack is called, but I get a pretty nasty top deck here where I top deck the Secret Box because my hand was absolutely terrible, and so I'm able to get into the game here. I think I'm just going to go for all of the guys. So I'm going to use the Secret Box to be able to search my deck for Proton, be able to set up my board, and then I get Factory to draw 2 cards, and then I have Ariana for the following turn just to be able to refill my hand and hopefully get into some spiders here. So, I think I'm cheering. I'm just going to go for either like triple spider. All right, I just grabbed the Mewtwo. So grabbing Mewtwo here is a lot of early pressure just to be able to potentially get an attachment off to it. And looking at my hand's like Energy, Spider, Brave Bangle. I draw the Articuno, which is really good here as well. And then I'm going to attach an energy to Spider because I think, like, you know what, I'm probably safe here to just attach to the active and potentially pass. And I'm just going to pass here. I didn't want to attack because I would have given Felipe a potential Monkey Dory. So then the Spidops does 10 damage to itself, putting itself down to 40. And then if he has like Monkey Dory, he's able to move 30 damage over to my Tarountula. And then so if something like a Crispin were to get involved there, it could go Psychic to the active, Dark to the Monkey Dory, and then KO my Tarountula because I put 10 damage on myself, which not ideal, but a pretty nice follow-up turn here from Felipe. He's able to get a double Dracloak plus a Lillie off. So not pretty intimidating board here, but I'm more than likely going to be able to get the first KO here. See the Buddy Poffin come down as well. I'm gonna make my face a little bit smaller so you guys can see the game. Ooh, I'm small. Okay, so there's gonna be a Dreepy grabbed off that, just to be able to get the 4th Dracloak later in play. And I think it's just gonna be all he's gonna grab. My next question is, okay, just from a gameplay stance, if my opponent is only getting a Buddy Poffin for the 1 Dreepy, you can kind of assume that it's going to be pure, but he actually just draws both of the Duskulls, so I get bamboozled a little bit there. And I think it's just into being a pass back to me after these Dracloaks get used, because, you know, you might as well get your 2 free cards. So Felipe's going to build a massive hand here. Use the Buddy Poffin plus plays down the 2 Duskulls, so it's 3 cards in his hand, so he should have 5. And then the Dracloak plus Dracloak is going to put him up to 6 and then 7. So he's going to start the turn with 7 cards, and then his next turn with 7 cards, and then he's going to be able to draw for turn of double Loke and basically start his turn with 10 cards in hand, which is pretty insane. But yeah, I think on this next turn, I'm able to get a pretty solid board here. I draw the Rocket Energy, which is really nice for the following turn, just to be able to get another... so I draw the Rocket Energy, so I'm able to attach this, and then I'm able to use the Charging Up to attach to my Spider, and then use Ariana to refill my hand, and then I can use the Rockets Factor to draw 2 more cards. So both my opponent and I end up with 10 cards in hand. I'm going to evolve one of my other Spiders there. It is a little scary because Dragapult can put 6 damage counters onto that Spider, but I was playing for in case I got the Unfair Stamp, or my opponent got the Unfair Stamp in their hands. So I'm going to be able to thin some of the cards out of my deck here, and I'm going to grab a copy of Lillie's Clefairy. So my logic here is that if my opponent here has like Energy Boss to be able to KO Clefairy, then my opponent's not going to use so if I bench the Clefairy, right, my opponent has to have Boss Energy Dragapult Unfair Stamp, which isn't super unlikely, but you kind of just have to play to your outs here. Also, if my opponent's playing like a Rare Candy build, they can go Rare Candy onto Dusknoir and then pop it onto Clefairy and then like KO it off the bench. So that's another thing that I thought about as well, but it seems kind of unlikely. But there's another Dracloak. So my opponent's down triple Pokepad and triple Dracloak, so I'm feeling pretty good here about my Clefairy potentially living the turn. Another thing that could be bad is something like a Judge. Judge could be mildly annoying, assuming I don't draw a good great card off of it. So there's the Lillies here. So I'm thinking, okay, my Clefairy is at least safe for this turn. So my opponent can't have a Boss's Order because they already played the supporter for the turn, and thankfully Countercatcher rotated. So Dragapult can, you know what I mean, do literally whatever they want. But, I mean, there is a possibility of, like, Energy plus Rare Candy Dusknoir, which would be pretty nasty here, just to be able to take a 3-prize turn. But then I can probably combat it if my opponent doesn't use their Unfair Stamp to be able to just KO this Dragapult with my Mewtwo. And then the nice thing for me is that if my opponent's using a Dusknoir here, I'm going to go back to even prize cards. So then this way, I only have to knock out 2 Dragapults for game, and my opponent can't really KO my Mewtwo unless they use a Dusknoir themselves. So as long as I'm able to take a 2-prize knockout of my opponent's turn, and then they use a Rare Candy Dusknoir again, I go down to 1 prize, and then I just have to find like Lillie's Clefairy plus an Energy Switch to be able to Energy Switch off of one of my Spiders. Or, let's see, I would have to find like a Giovanni to KO one of my opponent's 1-prize Pokemon on the bench. Because my opponent has that Monkey Dory down, they can't Force Evolve like triple Dragapult and be safe from my Spider being able to KO. So yeah, here, my opponent can take 3 prize, which is pretty scary, but I have to find another Spider there. I get an Energy Attachment to the Mewtwo, Night Stretcher for the Clefairy, and I have an 11 card hand too myself, so I'm not super worried. Yeah, so I go for the Energy Switch onto the Mewtwo, because I think I attached it from the discard pile to my Mewtwo, and I was just skipping steps there. But yeah, I have the Energy Switch in my hand. And then I think I have an Ultra Ball in my hand as well. I can use that to thin some cards out of my deck that I don't want to draw off a potential Unfair Stamp. I think I'm looking at that Rocket's Energy, because Rocket's Energy is not going to be super useful going forward. I should have attached the Reverse Hollow one because it's cool. I'm not sure what else is in my hand, but discarding that Ariana is maybe a little bit scary. And I grab Fez. I think this is fine in case I'm going to get Unfair Stamp. And then I go for the Team Rocket's Archer. So Archer's going to shuffle both of her hands in their deck. I'm going to draw 5. My opponent's going to draw 3. But it's going to be pretty negligible with those 2 Dracloaks in play. But the nice thing is here, at least I'm going to be able to get a KO onto my opponent's Dragapult. So yeah, I'm going to be able to draw, and then I'm going to be able to draw off my Fezandipiti as well. So then I was thinking about bumping my opponent's Watchtower with the Rockets Factory just in my deck some more cards, but I end up not going for it just because if my opponent is playing the Meowth in their deck, they're cut off from their own Meowth, so now I'm giving them less outs to play the game. So, but the nice thing is, on my opponent's turn, there's no way for them to win the game on this turn because they're going to be at 3 prize cards, and I guess like they could with like a Boss's Order, Rare Candy Dusknoir, but that's a lot to go to like want this turn. You have to have a Boss's Order for Clefairy. Yeah, so you'd have to have Boss's Order, a Psychic Energy, a Dragapult, a Rare Candy, and a Dusknoir. So that's 5 cards. So we see the Crispin here. So that's like a big weight off my shoulder because now I know that my opponent cannot Boss's Order my Clefairy. So worst case scenario, my opponent KOs my Mewtwo, and then on my next turn, I would just have to follow up with an Energy Switch plus a Psychic Energy. And it looks like in my hand right now, I do have an Archer, so I can reset my opponent's hand, but I'm actually just going to get Unfair Stamped back, which really sucks that I archered my opponent into the Unfair Stamp, because I was holding a pretty big hand here, and I draw 2 cards. I think one of them are that Rocket's Transceiver, so I can use that to at least Ariana for 5. I can potentially also use my Spider to Giovanni up a 1-prizer, in the instance my opponent does have the Rare Candy Dragapult here, or the Rare Candy Dusknoir. But if my opponent doesn't find Rare Candy Dusknoir exactly, the game is over, because the Mewtwo just KOs the Dragapult back after. So I'm just kind of telling him, like, listen, man, you got the Rare Candy Dusknoir, because you'd have to have, like, a Night Stretcher, because usually these decks only play 1 copy of Dusknoir, so it's like, I think, neither Night Stretcher has been used, but still, it's pretty improbable to find it. See a Risky Ruins come down. And then, yeah, this is going to be hit into the Mewtwo, and then I just tell him, yeah, the Dragapult's just going to KO me the following turn. And, yeah, that game is pretty much over. He was thinking, like, oh, if I found the Rare Candy, I could have, like, potentially KO'd something. But my last 2 prize cards are both Mimikyus, which is pretty insanely unlucky, because the Mimikyu is really strong into Dragapult. If you have Mimikyu plus the Lillie's Clefairy, you'll be able to KO the Dragapult for weakness and then put 6 damage counters on your opponent's board. So if they are playing the Duskull variant, you can KO a Duskull and take a 3-prize turn. And it's a swing that Dragapult usually cannot come back from. So very solid. All right, now going into round 2, and I'm really liking this camera angle. I wanted to put my camera in a different way so you can kind of see the board a little bit more clearly, and I've been really liking this. So, like, let's see, going into this game, I hit Garchomp, which pretty good matchup for me, considering that my Spider is a Grass type, and Garchomp has this little symbol in the corner that says weak to Grass, so very unfortunate for my opponent. And the mess up thing is, even with this card right here, this Cynthia's Power Weight that gives you an extra 70 HP, and Garchomp goes to 400 HP. You know, that's a lot of HP, bro. 400 HP. And with a full bench plus Brave Bangle, Spidops kills Garchomp. Your stage 2 400 HP Pokemon dies to my little Spider, which is pretty hilarious. So I take the executive decision here, because this Rock Hurl is 20 damage, evolve into into Roserade does 50 damage. So then that way my opponent right here is able to KO my little Spider. But Articuno also resists, so if my opponent does have like Rare Candy Garchomp but no Roserade, I actually do live the hit. Even if they were to like Rare Candy Garchomp and evolve, it does 130, so then minus 30, so I live with 20 HP left. So this Articuno is pretty useless in this matchup, but it can still soak up a hit from the Garchomp, which is pretty useful. So I like to retreat into that to save one of my Spiders. So I have an energy in the discard pile for my Spider for next turn. So as long as I find 1 energy, I should be fine. I also use the Rocket Transceiver there to thin a copy of Proton out of my deck. I'm more than likely not going to need the Proton for the rest of the game, because I already have all my guys out. So I'm saying, like, I think 2 Proton is potentially fine for the future. I think that you really don't want to go down to 1, because if you prize it, it's really bad. But you also do want to naturally open it sometimes, if you're not able to use your Transceiver. Especially like if you get like turn 2 Dude, and you need to find that Proton, like you top deck the Transceiver. You'd rather top deck the Proton because you can't play it. So my opponent gets the Gabite here to be able to double evolve. And this is kind of where the Cynthia's Garchomp deck is going to accelerate the most, is going to be like in this early game where decks can kind of struggle to set up in this format due to the lack of consistency. And the oh my god, I'm bumping the camera. The Gabite is able to search your deck for any Cynthia's Pokemon, which is really nice because you can search, you know, the thing that just lets you do more damage in the Roserade. You can search more copies of Gibble. You can search the Garchomp that you can immediately evolve into. So, yeah, Gabite has one of the better abilities in the game currently. But luckily for me, my opponent does not have an energy attachment. I think I'm just going to play this Watchtower here, just in case I just don't want to draw it again. And I guess my opponent could have a Meowth to like potentially set up a bigger board. But I don't even know if the Garchomp deck plays Fez or Lillie, or plays Fez or Meowth. So I'm going to be able to draw 8 cards here. I'm kind of fine here with just sitting behind the Gabite. I'm going to bench the Mimikyu here so I can have a pivot, because my Articuno is not a great pivot, and I'm kind of just expecting it to die. And I think I'm just gonna maybe potentially just pass here. I do have the Secret Box in my hand, so I'm able to pretty much respond with whatever I want. And normally benching Mimikyu would not be great in this matchup because my opponent could potentially be playing Monkey Dories. And so 2 Monkey Dory move back overs is going to be a KO onto my Rocket's Mimikyu. And so the reason I didn't want to put it down is 1, it's a pivot, but 2, because I do have the double Brave Bangle in my deck, I would be able to KO back-to-back Garchomps, which is very nice. So if my opponent does not find the Charm, I'm able to KO the Garchomp just naturally, which is really nice. So I think my opponent wasn't expecting me to have that. I think also evolving this bench, or I guess you have to retreat into this Garchomp. Yeah, I guess not finding energy there is just pretty unlucky after like all these searches. But yeah, this Garchomp's gonna absolutely obliterate my Articuno. See the Petrel come down for the Cynthia's power weight, and this is going to buff that Garchomp to 400 HP, which is absolutely ridiculous. Just like saying a Pokemon is 400 HP is so crazy. Like we've seen things get pretty up there with the Hero's Cape, but that's an A spec. That's just a regular tool that gives you 70 HP, bro. Like that's crazy. So let's see. I'm gonna go for the Team Rockets iPad here to be able to search my 3rd copy of Proton because I want to Secret Box it away. And it looks like I'm gonna be Secret Boxing away double Ultra Ball and the Proton, which, you know, I think I have another Rocket Stadium in my deck, so maybe I could have just gotten rid of the Rocket Stadium in my hand. But I do want another out, so I grab another Ultra Ball out of the deck, which I think is fine if I want to be able to search my deck for another Spider potentially later in the game. Here was where an Energy Search would have been very good. That's another card that kind of comes in and out of my list. I don't really know if you need 4 Rockets Energy in this deck. I could see a potential cut for the Rockets Energy because you can't use it with Spidops. You still do need that Grass Energy, so. Alright, let's see. I'm going to go for another Ultra Ball. I'm going to be able to get rid of that Rockets Stadium and the Petrel. Search my deck for Tarountula. So I think maybe getting rid of the Petrel here was also a bit of a misplay because next turn I could have used the Petrel to grab another copy of Brave Bangle. But I'm like thinning so many cards here. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm drawing 10 cards here. And I don't know if the Garchomp deck plays Unfair Stamp. I don't know what my opponent's A-Spec is at this point. But I really just kind of want to thin my deck as many cards as possible. And so I'm gonna have to Night Stretcher for this Articuno just to get it back, so I'm able to take the KO here because I didn't draw a Rockets Pokemon off those 10 cards. I would have even benched the Mewtwo if I drew it. I really don't care if my opponent gets 2 prize knockout on my Mewtwo because then my Spider is going to be able to come up and KO the guy back. So I'm able to do 420 damage to this Garchomp, which feels kind of illegal. Like my opponent took all these turns up to like build this guy up. And yeah, I'm just going to cook it with my little Spider. So yeah, the Spider's going to be able to KO the Garchomp. It's going to take me my first prize cards of this game. And so even here, even if my opponent is going to be able to KO my Spider, I'm able to just promote another Spider and then KO the Garchomp, assuming that I find another one. But it looks like I have a Night Stretcher in my hand, so I can Night Stretcher and use that to grab the Spider back. It looks like I have an energy attachment for turn as well. So yeah, this is the whole Spider. You know, guys are just going to come back and just do it again. I do it again. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the Rockets energy is like fine, but I don't really know if you want 4 in the deck because the only Pokemon you really are going to attach it to is Mewtwo and Mimikyu. And you don't really use Mewtwo every game. You're basically playing Spider, but like the Mewtwo comes in and does a feature every once in a while. It's like the old Young Money mixtapes. Like, you know, you'd have like Drake and, you know, you'd have like, I don't know, whoever else is on there, like Gutta Gutta. And then, you know, you see like the random Wayne feature on there. You're like, oh, nice. Like he came and put in some work. That's basically what the Mewtwo does in this deck. And if none of you understand anything I'm saying, you know, I've hit that big unk age now. So you know what I mean? It is what it is. All right, so I'm going to get the double Grass Energy down and then evolve another Spider. I'm going to use the Night Stretcher here to grab another Tarountula. And yeah, this is going to be a KO onto my opponent's active. I think I'm looking here. I'm going to play the Archer. I'm going to reset both of our hands because one of my Rockets Pokemon were KO'd the last turn. So yeah, that is probably going to be all she wrote, to be honest. I don't really see a way for my opponent to get out of this one, especially because they gave me the Force of Vitality, so I'll be able to evolve into a Rocket Spider if I want to. But I think I drew like 4 supporters off that, which is pretty insane. So I draw an Energy plus an Articuno plus a million draw cards. So the only way for my opponent to really get out of this is by having their own Unfair Stamp here. And I think we're going to talk a little about sequencing of my opponent's turn here. So they go for Gabite. ability to search Garchomp when they had a Gibble on the bench. So I definitely would have liked to see my opponent go for a Gabite to search Gabite and then Gabite search Garchomp. That way you're able to keep stringing along the Garchomps onto your board. I guess it doesn't really matter too much because if this Garchomp gets KO'd, the game is pretty much over. But yeah, this is pretty much just game here, attach, and then bonk, KO, and smack it, and yeah, take the last 2 prize cards. But yeah, this matchup is just really, really good for the Spider deck. I just don't really know what Rockets is supposed to do here, or I don't really know what Garchomp's supposed to do into Rockets. If you have a 1 prizer that KOs your 2 prizer, you know, stage 2 with a billion HP. So yeah, we're on a 2-0. All right, going into round 3, I'm gonna hit a Lucario. So I think Lucario is a very good matchup for this deck as well. There's a couple different reasons. One, you have a couple psychic Pokemon you're able to attack with. So you have Mewtwo plus Lillie's Clefairy, and Mewtwo is pretty hard to knock out for the Mega Lucario deck because you essentially have 310 HP because of the fighting resistance. So Lucario is going to have to find a Lucario with 2 energy and then find triple multiplier. So pretty nasty to have to find that, and like when you're getting archered as well. Like if I use a Spider to KO like my opponent's Soul Rock, my opponent has to respond with Lucario, and then I'm able to just kind of bring up one of my psychic Pokemon and take a 3 prize knockout. So that's pretty insane. So I'm able to get the turn 1 Proton and just fill my board up. This is like the ideal Rockets turn 1, and dude, those are Tarountulas are so clean, bro. Oh my god. Thanks to my boy Gade, I'm pretty sure he gave me one, and then my boy Emmanuel also gave me one. So yeah, they're super clean. But my opponent's got a pretty good setup over here. He got the triple Fighting Gong turn 1 to be able to search his deck for all the guys. And we see a Pokepad here. If I'm my opponent, I'm probably looking for like Makuhita here. Just kind of be able to bring up one of my opponent's bench Pokemon if I do try to bring up a 2 prizer. I could also see maybe like a Binnacle coming down here. Just to... Okay, we see another copy of Riolu. I'm not really sure how much I like this because we already have the 2 Riolu in play. There's nothing on my current board that is going to be threatening a KO. And I would have liked to see something like a Makuhita come down to be able to attach to it. So then that way, you're able to deal with the 1 prizers with more 1 prizers. And I'm going to get a Rockets Transceiver here. I mean, more than likely, this is going to search Ariana. And I'm actually going to grab a Proton here, which means I probably have a discard outlet. Oh my god, I just have Secret Box because I'm disgusting. And yeah, I'm going to get the Brave Bangle here. And I think I'm looking for like an energy search, probably like an Ariana. For an item, I probably want to... This is where energy search would be really good because I could play the energy search my deck for an item and then just kind of like do the whole combo. But I'm going to grab an energy switch. I think I might be holding an Ultra Ball in my hand to be able to discard. But let's see. So I'm going to go for Team Rocket's Factory. And then I'm going to play the Ariana to draw 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see. I draw Psychic and Grass here, which is pretty insane. I draw the Spider off the Factory. So I'm actually going to be able to just have the full combo here. So I'm going to be able to discard the Grass energy. And then I'm just looking at my hand. What if I like potentially want to discard? I think Fez is like fine here. Because more than likely I'm not going to want to bench that Pokemon into this matchup unless I absolutely have to. So I think here I'm probably just looking to grab... Oh, I actually just grabbed the Mewtwo straight up. So I'm going to just say, like, I'm going to just threaten back-to-back KOs of your Mega Pokemon. So I'm going to use the Spider to attach an energy to it, attach to the Clefairy, and then use the energy switch to search off the Secret Box. And then this is just going to be KO onto Mega Lucario. And yeah, I'm going to take a 3 prize knockout after my opponent KOs my 1 prizer, which is absolutely disgusting. Shout out to Secret Box for being broken. Legacy Energy would not do that, Josh. No shade, I love Josh, but yeah, Legacy Energy, that card sucks. So we're gonna see the Meowth from my opponent here. I'm assuming this is gonna either grab like a Lillie or a Judge to refill that hand back up. But yeah, things are looking really bleak. The Soul Rock is only really good against the Rockets deck before they put a Spider in play, because now my Spider is gonna KO your Soul Rock, and your Soul Rock is gonna need double PPP to be able to KO my Spider. But the bad thing is that in using double PPP, now it's going to be way harder for my Lucario, or for the Lucario player, to be able to KO Mewtwo from full, because then if they use 2, they only have 2 left, so they have to find something like Max Belt. So Max Belt's going to let them do 320, minus 30 is only 300, so they're still going to need to find a PPP. So Most of the Lucarios I've seen have kind of been moving off of the max belt though, so I think it makes your Mewtwo even stronger into that matchup, which is pretty hilarious. So we're gonna see the KO here. So my opponent's thinking, okay, so I can do 130 plus 150 is 180. So the PPP is going to be able to KO with a Lucario, and then he's going to be able to attach some energy to Fezandipiti, which is pretty funny. That isn't a funny win con you can use, just kind of snipe for 100 with the Fezandipiti. So here I'm going to go for the Ariana. I'm going to play the Mewtwo. I'm going to attach. I think I probably should have just failed. Oh, I never. Okay, so I have Proton for Energy Switch. Never mind. I just like have the game. So I used the Transceiver to just check if that card was in my deck. But my goofy ass, I don't kill this thing because I need an energy on my bench, and I hit this thing for 320 like a buffoon. But the nice thing is, because I've seen my opponent's ace spec, now I know they're not playing Scoop Up Cyclone, so I can potentially KO this Lucario with a Sneasel next turn, or I could potentially KO it with a Giovanni's. Obviously, this turn would have been way smarter to just attack with the Spider and just not bench the Mewtwo. Could have hit this thing for 180, and then, or even if I hit it for 150, right? I can use the Sneasel on the following turn to hit it for 300, because now if my opponent has Retreat into the new Lucario and KO my Mewtwo, suddenly I'm in awful position because I've used both of my energy switches, and my opponent's going to be at one prize. So I actually low-key lose the game. So potential game-losing misplay here, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, we're going to see the next Mewtwo come up here, or next Mewtwo, the next Lucario come up here. And my opponent's going to have a lot of modifiers here in order to KO me. There's the Judge, so I have used a good chunk of my Rockets Transceivers. I want to say I've played at least 2. My Fezandipiti's in the discard pile, but because I think I still had 2 Arianas in that last hand. And looking at my hand, I have a Ariana, a Grass Energy. So I'm looking okay here. So Mewtwo is gonna not be able to KO my Mega Lucario, or Lucario is not gonna be able to KO my Mega Mewtwo here, or it's basically a Mega Mewtwo. And it does 270 to it, so it's 10 short, and then I attach an energy, and then I'll be able to do 220, so it's gonna be double to 440 and KO the Lucario for game. So we're gonna move on to 3-0. Yeah, I think this matchup is also incredibly rough for Lucario, just because I have multiple psychic attackers, and then my one prize board that I can go into is pretty hard to break as the Soul Rock player, because my 2 spiders are going to overtrade into your 2 Soul Rocks, and you have to find 4 PPPs over the course of 2 turns to be able to even stay in the prize race. So I think this matchup is just really bad for Lucario. Alright, so unfortunately for this last game, I did not realize that my camera died like halfway into the game. So to bring you up to speed, I'm getting absolutely destroyed by a Ceruledge at the moment. So I led my Clefairy, so my opponent was able to just get a KO onto that pretty quickly. And in this game, I'm just kind of struggling to like play the game. My opponent had like this insane opening hand of like Triple Gong, Carmine, and then the Legacy Energy attachment to the Charcadet. So I knew it was kind of cooked because I mean, this matchup is actually not that bad for Rockets. I think it's actually probably a winning matchup because your Mimikyu plus Rockets Energy is able to KO your opponent's Ceruledge. So you can kind of create a one prize board where even if like you use Mimikyu to KO this is a one prizer, then your opponent comes up, KOs you with Soul Rock, then you come up and KO them with the Spider, then your opponent has to come up and kill you with Ceruledge, and then you come up and kill them with Mimikyu. Like, you're gonna eventually win the prize trade because your opponent's gonna have to hit you with a 2 prizer. But yeah, this game was just a very rough one. My opening hand was like Proton, like 3 energy, Clefairy, and yeah, this game is just very, very rough to just even really play the game. So on this turn, this is like the swing turn where like if I'm able to KO this thing, I might be in a good spot because I can go like Archer plus KO with the Mimikyu. So I go for the Secret Box here to kind of just thin my deck down as many cards as possible. Because on this turn, I have to find a Rockets Energy to KO this guy. And then if I combo that with an Archer to put my opponent down to 3 cards, I mean, they can find a Fire or a Fighting Energy to be able to KO me back. But then, you know, there's always shenanigans of, you know, me KOing the Soul Rock. And then, right, my opponent's at, I think, either 2 or 3 prize cards. If they're at 3 prize cards, I'm in like a really good spot. If they're at 2, it's a little bit more rough because then, you know, my Mimikyu can KO But then if my opponent finds like another Charcadet plus fire, it's pretty rough. So yeah, I'm gonna go for Archer here, and then I'm gonna Ultra Ball for a little Spider, and then let's see, I have the Fezandipiti in hand as well. So I'm gonna draw a ton of cards here, right? I'm gonna go for Archer, and at this point in the game, I have used 0 copies of Rocket's Energy. So, you know, this is one of those games where it's like, okay, maybe the 4 Rocket's Energy is not that bad, and unfortunately for me, the Dan Luck kicks in, and I'm gonna draw 10 cards here with 4 Rocket's Energies in the deck, and I'm gonna whiff. So I'm gonna play the Rockets, I'm gonna play the Transceiver, I'm gonna thin my deck. You can see a couple Rocket's Energies floating around in the deck, and here I got 3 more chart cards to do it, and Fezandipiti, help me. Okay, so never mind. I'm actually gonna thin one more time. I'm gonna play Ultra Ball. I'm gonna use the thin on Mewtwo, and yeah, I'm gonna. This is it. This is it, man. I gotta draw it off one of these 3. 1, 2, 3, and I whiff the Rocket's Energy, and I tell him, yep, there's 4 Rocket's Energy in there. So I'm gonna end up losing in the finals to Ceruledge, which is pretty unfortunate, but I think the Rockets deck is very good. I think this is actually a winning matchup for the Rockets deck, but sometimes you just get out aggroed, and that's kind of the downfall of the Rockets deck, is sometimes you can be a little bit slow to set up because you have a supporter-based Pokemon search card for turn 1, so your turn 1 is pretty uneventful, and then turn 2 you have to find like energy plus discard outlet, which isn't too hard, but you know, if you whiff it for a turn or 2, you can definitely fall behind. Because Spider doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does kind of enough. This 270 damage is definitely a little bit awkward to kind of KO into if you're not able to find Gemstone Mimikry to be able to KO it back. Copying that second attack is really funny in this matchup, just to be able to use a 1 prizer to KO a 2 prizer. So yeah, I think this is probably like a 60-40 for Rockets, but I end up getting blown out in this game because of that Clefairy lead. So on this turn, right, like if I didn't lead Clefairy and I led like a shittier 1 prizer, my opponent would be at a 3rd prize card here, and then I'd be able to KO this, go to 3, my opponent takes 1, and then I come up with another Mimikyu, KO this, go to 1, my opponent's gonna go down to 1, and then I win the game the next turn. Because my opponent attacks with Soul Rock, I win the game. My opponent wouldn't have another Ceruledge down ideally, but with 4 prize cards taken, plus another 2 turns of supporters, it'd be really tough to not find like a second or a 3rd Rockets Mimikyu, plus I'd have to find Night Stretcher plus 3rd energy, which isn't too hard. Ceruledge doesn't play any hand Ceruledge doesn't play any hand disruption, so I should be fine on that front. So thank you guys for watching, and yeah, Rockets is really good. I think Rockets is edging towards a tier 1 deck. I think that if not, it's like the top of like tier 1.5, because if you think of the best decks like Lucario, like Dragapult, like the random slot box decks, like this deck matches pretty well into all of them. And then versus the random 1 prize rogue decks, you have an okay like game plan into them, because something like Mewtwo can take a prize card and then they hit into you for 140, and then like you hit them back and take a KO. So you're taking 2 with your Mewtwo, and they're taking 2 with their Dogi. And then you can like come up with like a Clefairy, take 2 with Clefairy because they can't one-shot your Clefairy as well. And then if your opponent has like an attack with the Soul Rock, you're able to attack with a Spider. So I don't know, like random decks you have game plans into. So definitely pick up Rockets if you think it looks fun. Deck's like $40 to build, so it's definitely one of those decks you want to just have in your gauntlet for locals. And thank you guys for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.